Today's critique looks at a fascinating piece arguing that constant exposure to short-form videos diminishes teenagers' mental resilience by shrinking their perception of time and offers practical steps to rebuild it. And jumping right in, as I understand it from the notes, the argument here is that a constant stream of algorithmic rewards actively destroys a student's ability to think long-term.
Yeah.
Which, creates this vicious cycle of low resilience and high addiction. And that brings us immediately to what feels like a glaring contradiction in how the fixes are presented.
The proposed solutions are highly actionable, but there is an inherent contradiction in asking teenagers whose future orientation has been compromised to independently set and stick to 3-year goals. I mean, the text spends the entire first half meticulously proving that rapid-fire video loops severely atrophy a young person's impulse control.
Right.
It explicitly details how these algorithms rewire the brain's baseline expectations for reward, right? So the brain literally forgets how to wait. But then, the author pivots to a 4-step solution that demands an incredibly high level of executive function.
Like defining a 3-year goal?
Exactly. Defining a 3-year goal and then using the urge to check the phone as a cognitive cue to remember that distant goal. The weakness here is that the text asks teenagers to use the exact cognitive muscles that the article just proved have been severely atrophied.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a bit like telling someone with a broken leg that the best way to heal is to, run a marathon. They need crutches first. Is the piece assuming way too much baseline resilience for its own solution to work?
That is exactly the friction at the heart of this section. The premise is brilliant. The idea that teenagers are locked in a state where they are stuck in the present second because their dopamine loops have been hijacked.
Yeah.
When you are scrolling, your brain isn't thinking about next week. It's anticipating the next swipe, which is half a second away. But then the author expects the reader to seamlessly project themselves 36 months into the future.
To defeat a visceral, immediate craving.
Right. When a teenager feels the urge to check their phone, their amygdala is completely in the driver's seat. The prefrontal cortex, which cares about college, or a 3-year plan, is completely offline.
I can see what you're going for here, but let me push back just a little bit. Isn't setting a massive long-term goal a classic psychological technique? Like if someone is stuck in the mud, don't you have to give them a star on the horizon to look at?
Well, sure.
If we just focus on small things, aren't we lowering the bar too much?
In a healthy, fully regulated adult brain, absolutely. A distant star is a great motivator. But this piece is specifically about adolescent brains that have been conditioned by multi-billion-dollar algorithms to expect a payoff every 10 seconds.
That makes sense.
So to fix this contradiction, the suggestion is to introduce transitional stepping stone goals so the reader understands how to rebuild this capacity gradually.
Okay, so concrete examples of that would be what?
Before setting a massive 3-year goal, suggest that the user first defines a 3-week or even just a 3-month goal to practice extending their time horizon.
Right, you have to stretch the muscle slowly. Like, if their current time horizon is 30 seconds long, successfully delaying gratification for 3 whole weeks is a monumental achievement.
Exactly. And we also have to look at that 4th step, reframe the 4th step. Instead of relying purely on internal willpower to swap an urge for a memory of a 3-year goal, suggest an intermediated behavioral friction to break the impulse loop.
Okay, intermediate behavioral friction, like a time delay app or something.
Yeah, something that forces you to wait before social media opens.
Wait, I'm struggling with the time delay app suggestion. I mean, those apps are notoriously easy for teenagers to bypass.
Yeah, they really are.
They memorize the override passcodes, or they just swipe past the delay screen out of pure muscle memory. Are we just replacing a mental hurdle with a digital speed bump that they can hack in 5 seconds?
That is an excellent point, and it highlights exactly why digital friction often isn't enough for a brain deeply in an algorithmic loop. If a time delay op is too weak, the friction needs to be physical.
Like what?
The author could suggest keeping the phone's charger in another room or placing the phone in a zipped backpack during study hours. The key is to insert physical time between the urge and the action so the prefrontal cortex can finally boot up.
So, a key theme running through this material seems to be individual responsibility and self-management.
Yes.
But if we're talking about physically moving the charger to another room, we're suddenly talking about the environment itself, which leads to a broader question. Does focusing purely on the teenager's emotional intelligence accidentally let the environment and the tech companies off the hook.
I completely agree. The material places the entire burden of overcoming algorithmic addiction on the individual teenager, missing a critical opportunity to address the need for external and environmental support.
Shouldn't the text acknowledge that willpower alone isn't a fair fight here?
Exactly. The weakness is that the text treats the teenager in a vacuum. It frames the struggle purely as an internal battle of emotional intelligence against highly engineered, addictive algorithms.
It really does.
By focusing solely on what the teen must do, like putting a goal on their wallpaper or asking themselves questions during setbacks, it ignores the systemic nature of the problem and the absolute necessity of external scaffolding to help break the loop.
I mean, it's asymmetric warfare. On one side, you have thousands of the world's smartest engineers armed with endless data. On the other side, you have a 15-year-old trying to rely on a wallpaper image of a college to stop themselves from scrolling.
It is mathematically impossible for the teenager to win that fight on willpower alone.
Right, so what's the move here?
The suggestion is to widen the angle to include external scaffolding. We need to frame the actionable steps not just as an individual isolated exercise, but as a collaborative effort involving the environment.
Okay, I hear you on the theory, but I'm trying to picture how a reader actually implements this. If I go to a 15-year-old and tell them we need to co-create a multi-year goal, they're going to roll their eyes and walk away.
Oh, absolutely.
What does this collaborative effort actually look like in practice, without it turning into a screaming match?
It's a very real concern, which is why we need concrete examples here. Modify the actionable steps to suggest co-creating these goals with a parent, mentor, or teacher who can help hold that future horizon when the teenager's perspective inevitably collapses.
Because they will lose sight of it.
Exactly. But it shouldn't just be a conversation. Add a step about altering the physical environment, such as establishing phone-free zones during homework.
So they are relying purely on emotional intelligence. Is there a risk that focusing solely on emotional intelligence might overlook the biological reality of how habits are actually formed?
Oh, 100%. Think about the biological orienting response. If a phone is sitting on a desk and it buzzes, the human brain is evolutionarily hardwired to look at it.
Right, you can't help it.
It is a survival mechanism. No amount of emotional intelligence or 3-year goal setting is going to stop that orienting response. By changing the environment, you remove the necessity for the teen to make constant, draining choices.
That makes perfect sense. The environment acts as an external brain, taking over the heavy lifting of impulse control. But even if we get the phones out of the bedrooms, we still have to address the internal reality the teen is living in right now.
Yeah.
Let's look closely at the section discussing the horizon metaphor, because I think it ties into this.
The concept of a shrinking time horizon is the most compelling intellectual hook in the piece, but its emotional weight is underexplored before the text transitions into the practical solutions.
The author uses that brilliant visual analogy, right?
Yes, that just as drawing a horizon line gives physical proportion to objects, a sense of the future gives emotional proportion to immediate difficulties.
I love that. If you draw a mountain without a horizon line, you can't tell if it's a pebble near your eye or Everest in the distance.
It's a gorgeous analogy, but the weakness is that the text rushes past this profound psychological insight straight into the 4 bullet points.
Oh, it skips the payoff.
Exactly. This dulls the emotional impact of why temporal self-regulation matters so much and fails to fully capture the subjective, painful experience of the teenager.
Could we think of this shrinking time horizon like a camera stuck on a macro lens? When you're zoomed in that close, a grain of sand looks like a boulder blocking your path. Can the author make the reader truly feel that claustrophobia?
That's a fantastic word for it. Temporal claustrophobia. The suggestion here is to linger on the emotional reality of the shrunk horizon to build greater empathy and raise the emotional stakes for the reader before delivering the pragmatic steps.
Okay, so give me some concrete examples of how to do that. How do we show that claustrophobia?
Wow. Yeah, because when that math test fills the entire macro lens, the physiological response is real panic. There is literally no after the math test.
Exact. And contrast this vividly with the feeling of a healthy time horizon. In a healthy brain, that same bad grade is just a tiny bump on a very long road. This makes the transition to the solutions feel like a vital rescue mission rather than just a list of tips.
Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of the parents reading this? It helps them empathize rather than just dictate rules. That is the exact paradigm shift the text needs. When a parent understands that the panic is real, that the teenager's brain literally cannot process a reality beyond the immediate moment, it creates deep empathy.
So they aren't dealing with a dramatic teenager, they are dealing with a teenager whose internal sense of time has been compressed to the point of genuine pain.
Right. It allows the parent to help build those environmental scaffolds from a place of compassion.
This translates the science into reality. Okay, well, we've covered a lot today. Let's recap. We explored bridging the executive function gap in the solutions section, broadening the scope of the intervention to include environmental scaffolding, and deepening the emotional resonance of the central time horizon metaphor.
Yeah, to summarize the concrete takeaways for the writer, introduce intermediary stepping stone goals to build up their time horizon gradually.
Right.
And add elements of external and parental support, like physical friction, to the actionable steps to balance the burden. Finally, expand the descriptive language around the claustrophobic feeling of a shrunk time horizon to raise the emotional stakes.
Amazing. We warmly invite the listener to apply these structural and tonal shifts to their piece and submit the revised work back to us for a follow-up critique. Let's help them see the whole horizon.